A tiny bit of background about us. You can see those bullet points on screen maybe, but we've been in the profession for the best part of 3 decades now as a business. We set My Firm's app up about 7 years ago. I've been involved around 20 myself. So what we're talking through, we've been on a very similar journey as to yourself here. This is grounded in not just what's happening in society, but with the hundreds of thousands of clients of other accounting firms that are using the stuff that we've built and the thousands of firms who have engaged in there as well. Some of you looking around the room might recognize this picture. Any takers? Or was it just me who enjoyed this program? So the program, thank you. Clive Anderson, whose line is it anyway? If you remember that comedy show, one of my favorites. But the reason for that is the question is, whose client is it anyway? In today's world, and when you look around an auditorium like this morning I was talking to, I've got 2 daughters, talking to my youngest daughter, she's 9, Elizabeth, and I was trying to explain to her, she was asking how big this place was. I said, well, you could put our village, the next village, and the one after in this building to try and give her an idea of how big it was. And when you think about the scale of this sort of thing, then you've got so many people around here who create some fantastic stuff. Really good cloud software, really good portals, really good add-on programs. There's lots of really good things. But most people are motivated by monetizing the end user. That's your client. And so there's an important question to answer about whose client is this anyway? How do we look after that client? How do we create the right relationship for them in this digital landscape as well as the one that we've had thus far? So we're going to look at these 3 points here. We're going to talk about conscious decision making, how the knowledge is power. We all know that famous saying, but it's about how we apply that knowledge that matters, and also how we lead the charge with the client. Now, that's not my word. That's a client of ours in America, a firm called Complete Controller, a bookkeeping and accounting firm in America. And Jennifer, the lady who runs that business, it was her language, and it really resonated. How do we actually present stuff to our client in a way that gets them to do it? So around the room at the moment, how many of you are using some form of technology or online software at the moment across the client base? Okay, most people nodding or putting their hands up. How many of you have struggled with some of your clients to actually get them to do stuff? Okay, yeah. So this is Jennifer's story, and I'll come back to it a bit later on, but how we lead the charge with clients to help them do it. I mentioned the phrase conscious decisions earlier. It's become a bit of a mantra for me. And it matters a lot because so often we try, and I'm the same, we try and make very big decisions, this sort of game-changing stuff. Right, I'm going to do this, and it's a silver bullet, and it's going to change how I run my firm. It's going to change how I interact with my clients. Well, sometimes you get moments like that, but for the most part, it's the small stuff, isn't it? How we deal with things on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis that matters. And to be fair, you would probably advise your clients along the same sort of way, but how many of us are actually looking back at our own business and making those sorts of similar decisions as to our businesses and making those incremental improvements that really matter? Because we can hear things and go, well, I'll come back to that later, or I've got a sense of it and I'm not sure about it. Now, a conscious decision doesn't mean that you have to say yes to something. It could be a no, but it's making it with clarity. Find out what's important, why that matters to you, and then make a yes, no, or a park decision. But do it with absolute clarity and not letting things drift as you go through. Otherwise, we find ourselves in an environment where a year or 2 down the line, and I just had that very conversation next door, somebody who spoke to me 4 years ago who's just come back, and they've just been through that journey of just waiting to see what happens, whereas what they're now saying, going, I wish I did this 4 years ago. And it was about a process, it was about a communication point with their clients. And it's taking that information that you gather when you work it out and doing something about it. One of the talks that we had just before this session, actually, was a chap from Australia called Andrew van der Beek. Anybody was in that session as well? Yeah, a couple of you at the back there. So one of the things that Andrew was talking about there is about being authentic, about knowing who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. And the reason that matters in this context is it's saying, well, what type of firm do you want to be? And what type of experience is it you want to create for your client? Because there's a lot of noise out there, a lot of commentary, you'll probably hear it as much as I do, about compliance versus advisory and other such adversarial battles that we manufacture between us all. And it's not about that, it's just about saying, look, this is the type of firm I want to be. Let's recognize the society that's around us. Let's use technology as an enabler. That's cool. But what type of firm do I want to be? And then that helps you make better decisions about how you create those connections with clients, how you create those connections with prospects if marketing is important to you, because you might not want to grow your business. But if you do, then it's important about how you create those connections and nurture those relationships with prospects as well. And to give you an example as to some of the pace of change, and that's just why I'm going to say that one last time, they're around conscious decision makings on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. The pace of change is enormous. And we find ourselves like the folks who I was just talking to next door 4 years later going, man, that went by fast. If only I'd done this 4 years ago. And an example of that is we were moving house, like it does. The house move fell through. But one of the good things that we found from it was this. Anybody recognize this? So I found this in the garage. I walked into my house. I showed it to my kids. I said, kids, what's this? And both of my daughters just looked at me more strangely than they normally would do. And so I thought, fair enough, I'll go to the office. We run a fintech company. It's a global business. We hire lots of really smart people. So I walked in and said, team, what's this? And they couldn't tell me. And it was at that moment I realized we now employ people who are younger than this device. And what I think this was my first ever smartphone. So I had a mobile phone before, but this was my first ever smartphone. It's the Nokia Communicator. And do you know what one of the defining features of this thing was? Why it was so cool? You could send and receive a fax while you were walking. Yeah, isn't that brilliant? Now that dates it straight away, doesn't it? But I remember walking down Ilkley High Street once, and I sent a fax from here, and I folded it up, put it back in my pocket, and I felt amazing. Look at me doing business on the go. And that's how quickly time has moved on, because we fast forward now, when we actually employ people who are younger than that device. And if we look at the technology around us, how it's become immersed 10 years ago that Apple launched the iPhone, how that's become immersed in society and the difference that makes. And that matters because it's now across all generations. Let me ask you here, because I can see there were some people with whiter hair than others around the room. How many people here have got a smartphone on them today? Okay. Are your clients any different? No. Okay, so we've all using these devices. That change in society has already come through. And because it's happened, that now requires us to make some other choices. How are we going to develop our firms now in a way that is going to work within the society that is already upon us? This is not future stuff. These are not great big predictions about how the world will change in 5 years' time. This is just today. And how are we going to do this in a way that's going to attract the type of client that you want to be working with inside of your firm as well? So the stats we're about to go through at the moment to help you and help us both in the conversation, these come from some very credible sources. These aren't just my opinions. So these come from people like App Annie. If you've never heard that name before, they're the leading authority on the state of the app ecosystems globally. And then you've got people like these others on screen in front of you at the moment. A lot of research. And so the numbers that we'll highlight from here are ones that hopefully will help you. And for those of you who are listening to this and you've got teams of people that you work with or partners that you need to talk this through as well, it's important that the penny drops from these things. Because it's going to sound a little bit like I'm stating the obvious. But so often I hear this phrase come back to me. Dan, that sounds great, but it's not for my clients. Now, if I can be a little bit bold for a moment, that's utter nonsense. Of course it's for your clients. Your clients are just like you and I. But there's something else driving that thought in the firm. There's something else behind that question that needs digging into. And unless we all know the foundation that we stand on, we can't build the house in the right way. And so it's important that everybody understands the numbers. Gordon Moore, you might not know his name, but you'll know what he's done. He co-founded Intel, you know, that little chip in every one of our computers. So he co-founded Intel. And in 1965, he said that change has never happened this fast and it will never be this slow again. That was in 54 years ago, if my mental arithmetic's any good. So we can probably resonate with that, can't we? We could say that same statement today. We know the pace of change that we're in, which is why getting the right sort of foundations in place are really important. It's also, when you talk with others in your firm, whether they be team members, whether they be partners, it's asking them to say, well, just step back from the conversation a moment. We need to make some choices as to our firm and what we're going to do with our clients now. But these numbers, they're easily authenticated by looking around you. We've all got smartphones here. If you look at the people sat outside having a cup of coffee at the moment, what are they doing? When you got here on the train, what are people doing? If you look around your family in your own living room, these things are easily authenticated as you go through. Now, RSM did some research. Apparently, we now have all 5 generations in the same working environment for the first time since the Industrial Revolution. So all 5 generations, great-grandparents and great-grandchildren in the same working environment. And we might ask ourselves the question, well, with such a diverse age range across that and demographic, how do we do something that's going to look after everybody in that space? But actually, when you dig deeper, the common technology in there is the fact that they're all using these smartphones. I was in my living room not so long ago, and this same daughter that I was talking about, the size of the building here, we'd been out for the day. She was sat by the fireside playing a little game on the smartphone, and as I looked around the other side of the living room, her great-grandmother was on her iPad updating Facebook with the pictures that she'd taken that day. And it was just me sat in the middle with a glass of wine, wondering what's going on. 2 opposite ends of life, both comfortably using the same technology. So actually, that's not a threat. That's not something that we need to be concerned about. That's an amazing opportunity. Because when before, if we had that sort of technology where we can communicate with every portion of our client base in a way that's attractive and easy and understandable by them, how many of us find it hard to get answers to emails? How many of us have got clients who don't even use emails? Yeah, some of us. So if we've got that sort of environment, now we have a technology that could become an enabler, if you want it to be, across your client base. What we've got here are some statistics from 2016, and it shows us the split of the smartphone usage. Oh, I'll stand on here and feel tall for a moment. So here we've got, across the different age ranges, this is from 2016, you can see the population split and how people are using these things at the moment. So if you find that you struggle with partners or with team members in trying to get them to switch on to where your thoughts are and how we're going to engage with our clients, what sort of marketing do we need to do that's going to attract people into our firms now, then we can use numbers like this to say, look, this was 2 years ago. It's only got faster since. There's only more people using these sorts of devices now. Roberta Kozza, she's the research director for Gartner. You might know of Gartner, very credible company. She says it's at 90% penetration. So when we actually look at the foundation that we stand on, that society that's already changed around us, and then the choices we want to make about our firm, these sorts of things matter. They also matter when it comes to what type of approach do we take to our clients and our prospects now. Because if you look at how people use websites, how many of you have got a website? Please? Okay, pretty much everybody. That's appropriate. Websites are still important. They are. But their reason has changed. If you've got a website now that's still jam-packed full of tax tables, calculators, newsletters from the last 52 years, and you've got pages and pages of stuff, it's almost certainly not being used. If you find out how to look at your analytics, if you got those internally or through a person that you pay to look after it, have a look at those analytics, and it will teach you something about the choices you want to make for your website. Because actually what people are looking for now is something short, simple, clean, attractive, your contact information. Do these look like the sort of people I want to work with, and how do I contact them? 5 pages, 6 pages, 10 at most. It wants to be nice, mobile friendly and clean. But if we go back to those earlier numbers we were looking at about how many people are using the technology, smartphones and tablets, look at how they're spending their time. Only 10% of time on those devices are spent browsing websites. The rest are through app interfaces. So then we have to ask other questions, don't we? How do we create something now for the clients that actually put the data in front of them in a way that's more accessible? And here, apps are a daily integration for all demographics. I don't know if you can see these numbers. This is saying how often a day do you use apps on your smart devices? And these are the age brackets broadly, millennials, Generation X, and baby boomers and older. 84% of the older generation, baby boomers and older, are using their apps between once or 20 times a day. And when you go down here, some of them, my daughter included, are using them more than 50 times a day at the younger generation. It's a remarkable thing. That's become a normal part of life. If you think about how you check for the weather forecast, how you use messaging, how you hail a taxi, how you book a restaurant, whatever it might be, these things are normal. And the growth in fintech, which is our space, you and I together, is incredible. So over the last 2 years, it's up 75%, the growth in consumers, you and I, using fintech-style apps. So people have gone off from using Angry Birds and Worms and those sorts of games on the apps. They've moved on from just using Facebook and Twitter and such things, although those things still exist, of course. But there's been a 75% growth in using fintech apps. That's where our clients are. That's where our prospects are. And that's why we need to be making these choices about how we get that connection with our client that really matters, that draws them closer into the firm and doesn't make it a much more diluted, disparate relationship where they've got this here and that there and something elsewhere. How do we bring them back together into the firm? And you can see the other points in there as well. The growth in the sessions of those fintech apps shows how sticky they are. If you want to be the first port of call for your clients, that now matters in the digital world as much as it does within the offline relationship you've had thus far. Average user checks their bank account, has gone up by 35% in there. In 2018, just last year, over 7 times a week. So people are looking for this information. They're going for things. If you can present my business data to me in an easy-to-consume screen on your own app, so it's your relationship with me, and then you can communicate with me through there and tell me what data is available and what you want me to be seeing, that's so much easier than the 120 emails in my inbox this morning that aren't going to get seen today or tomorrow, and I'm going to get somebody else to filter them before I look at them next week because there'll be too many to handle. So that's how you can get the communication and things going. Time is our most precious resource. I think we might all agree on that. But the time, how people are choosing to spend their time, amazing, it's gone up 50% over the last 2 years as well. So if that's how people are choosing to spend their time, that's okay. We have permission now, you and I, to go to our clients in a way that we might not have felt we did 3 or 4 or 5 years ago and say to them, look, this is normal. Let's give you things that help. Let's put things in front of you that are going to work much more easily. What we can also see here is that people are happy to trust that technology. They're happy to pay through it. They're happy to transact through it. And so if they're happy to do that, then they're happy, in theory and in practice, to sign off a document with you online or to have a look at their P&L or the cash flow forecast you put together for them. If they're happy to trust this technology for other things that they're already doing, then as a business, let's present those sorts of things to our clients in a way that's easy for them to get hold of and easy to work with as well. And this is about talking about all our clients and prospects. So this is the share of smartphones, just to finish that statistic off. So you can see the age ranges at the bottom here, 16 to 24, 25 to mid-30s, 40s, 50s and onwards. Then the sheer proliferation of these devices and how people are using them on a daily basis means that actually we have perhaps an obligation to respond to our clients in a certain way. And with that app-based data flow becoming normal. So that's the change in society that's happened. I'm looking around the room, no one's shaking their heads at me just yet. Some people are looking very hot, almost as hot as I feel. But apart from that, I'm sure we're very much on the same page from there. And with it being, that's not my grandmother, by the way. It was just the closest photo we could find for it. So, but it's the fact that we can give something now across all echelons of our client base. That's really exciting because we've struggled over the years, I'm sure you have as well, to do something that's going to work across there. You might send different messages depending on the people you're talking to through the apps, but you can give something to them now, make some decisions as a firm that really matter. One of the things that change is also creating is a shift in the local and loyalness that has always been around the accounting space. And you might recognize this. It'd be interesting to get your nods or shakes of the head as I'm talking. But there is now, you don't have to be the accountant next door for me to use you. There are a lot of people who are setting up businesses that are purely remote. They're online. They're dealing with people globally, or they're dealing with people within sectors or specialisms or different parts of the country. And so actually, if we're thinking about the future now as well for our firm, what choices can we make at the moment that are going to not just protect those clients that we have today, but might help you reach into other markets if that's of interest to you, but certainly help to protect it as people become less local to what we're doing. It's also a question about who are you being compared to. James Ashford speaks well about this, if you know his name. But to give you an example, if I wanted to go onto Amazon and I wanted to get a new jacket, or if I wanted to order something for the kids or some more dog food, it can be at my house the next morning. That's the ease of that experience. If I wanted to watch a film with the kids, what do? I go onto Amazon Prime or some other Netflix type thing. I click the button and it's there and it's available. If I had someone phone me from America the other day. He said I was sat in my dentist's room and they were getting me to fill in some details on an iPad whilst I was waiting to go in and see the dentist. And he thought, why don't I have this for my clients? If my dentist is doing this, why don't I have it for my clients? There is so much that we've become educated into now around society, and I bet we both get frustrated if we don't find that things are easy, if we can't contact the people we want to easily, if we can't buy something and get it delivered fast if it's important to us, then that creates a bit of a frustration, doesn't it? in our lives, because that's become normal to us now as well. So as a firm, who are you being compared to now? It's no longer just the next guy sat down the road or the next accountant that you're working next to. It's everything in society. What's the experience that we're creating for our clients? How easy is it for them to see the data? How easy is it for them to send you a message even out of hours? How easy is it for them to get a notification from you with the important stuff you want to share with them? How easy is it for them to collect the data they need to be getting hold of in the first place to then send over to you? And how can we make those things simpler for the client? Because those experiences really matter, and those are the things that we're going to be get judged by together over the months and the years to come as well. And the demand for this will only increase. If you look at the bit that's circled in red there, we can see where the population growth is coming from. So it might be today, and that is normal, but if we look ahead, then the younger generation that are coming through at the moment, this is all that they expect. And so if we want to be attractive to those people, if we want to be creating the connections and the experiences that matter, then we want to be building those sorts of, or making those sorts of decisions at the moment that best look after it. I was chatting to a chap called Gary Rothman, runs that firm, Zuckerman and Associates, and he described his firm as being like a tree. I like pictures, it helped my simple mind to understand it, so I thought I'd share it. He said, Dan, it's a bit like a tree. If you don't look after the roots of a tree, it will eventually wither and die. And he says, our firm is just the same. If we're not looking after our younger clients, but most especially, he was talking about his staff at this point. So how many of you here employ people? How many of you got teams? Okay, most of you. So if we're not looking after our younger staff as well and team members, then what are we doing to our firm? Who are we going to pass this thing on to, or how are we going to attract the talent that we want coming into it? Will Farnell speaks really well about this, about building a people firm in a digital world. He'll be speaking about it later on today, and if you haven't read his book, I'd encourage you to do so. It talks about this aspect in quite some detail. But if we look about what motivates the millennial generation and the generation, I get lost in the nomenclature, the Z, isn't it, that's coming on after them, then what motivates them? Money is still important, but it's not as important as it might have once been to you and I. It's about culture. It's about what environment am I working in here? What is the opportunity to learn? And if those are the key drivers, how are we making decisions in our firm at the moment that are looking after the type of talents that we want today and encouraging that to grow on, that are going to create the right experiences for our clients both today and in the future? And if we look at how people are using these devices, this number here is 84%. So this is 84% of people below 34 are using messaging on their smart devices as the number one reason for using it. So if we're still trying to email those people and we're struggling to get answers from them, there might be a reason for that. So if 84% of their behavior is already spent messaging, why not create something as a firm that you can put in front of them that brings everything together into one environment to begin with and simplifies their life there, gives you more control and puts you at the heart of that relationship, but then also allows you to communicate in a way that's going to get the response that you want and in a way that's 5 times more effective than using email already. These are some of the choices we've got. So we've got email, text messaging, and push notifications on the side. Push notifications, those are the messages that you get that pop up on your smartphone, like from the BBC with a news item, or LinkedIn if someone wants to connect with you and it pops up on your screen. So those are notifications. The reason these things matter, this chart again is very helpful as you make some decisions. If we look down at the open rates here, this is an average, but it's a high end of the average, 23% open rate on emails. But if you look across the channel here, text messaging and notifications generally get a 90% open rate, and these are on general terms. If it's you who's sending me a message because you're my accountant and I want to hear from you, it's not another game that my kids have downloaded at the weekend, I want to hear from you, then that 90% is normally 100% because it's an important communication that comes through. So you can take those numbers and move them on. When you go down, how many people here get spam emails every day? Yeah, it's an absolute nuisance. How many of us are scared to open or delete stuff that's probably important because we think, actually, that might be a bad one, I'm just going to delete it and see what happens next? Whereas if we move that into the space and it's all GDPR compliant and you start using notifications, they don't have malware in them. It works in a totally different way. So now you have a way of communicating that is GDPR compliant, that gets a 5 times more effective result than using email when it comes to opening and getting things done better in a way that's more trusted by your clients. The greatest advantage of communicating via notifications versus text messaging is your notification is connected to your app. And because it's connected to your app, it means you can now do something else. This is a text message is a siloed communication. It's in one place and it's locked in that channel, whether it's WhatsApp or whether it's on a normal text message. What a notification allows you to do is say, "Hi Dan, those files are online, please sign them off now." And when I press the notification, your app can automatically open and I can sign the document off and move on with my life. It gets things done more easily. That notification that you send out might be a reminder, "Dan, export your expenses and send them over to me, please." And it can link to that tool. Or when we were talking earlier, Dan, and you're asking about paying someone another £2,000 a year, have a look at this calculator in our app. It will show you what their take home will be. And you can serve people so much more easily with that sort of communication, and you can link it into content, tools, information that you want to be doing as well. Does that make sense? Great. So the question is, your clients are there, the technology is in place. Where are you? How many people in this room at the moment have their own app that they give to their clients? Okay, maybe 3 or 4 nods that I'm looking around the room at the moment. So there are some decisions you can take. You don't have to do this stuff, but I would encourage you to make a conscious decision around it. What is the society we're in? Use this sort of stuff to help your team members or partners if you need to, so that we're all on the right foundation. Make a decision, yes or no, but make it with clarity. Don't just ambivalently go, "Oh, it's not for us," or "I don't understand it," or "I'm not sure that feels right." Make some clear decisions about it, because that's most important to your firm and the outcomes that you're looking for your future as well. Paul Dunn, some of you will know his name there as well. He speaks about this being the age of connection. I think that's a fair way of putting it. At the moment, the connections that we've got, they exist on these devices. If I want to talk to my children, I can. If I want to talk to my wife, I can. If I want to talk to my accountant, I can. If I want to do other things, I can. How do we get a connection on these sorts of devices? Not because this becomes a silver bullet, because it should augment the human relationship that we've got. Because that's what's most important, our relationship together. But if this is where people are spending time, if this is where communication happens better, let's make that easier for people, and then that can help serve the human relationship and not replace it further down the road. So laying those foundations, leading the charge. I promised to talk about this. This was Jennifer's story. So Jennifer described this, and it was the turn of phrase that caught my ear, so much so that actually I recorded a video with her and got her to ask her to talk me through it. If you want a copy of that, look me up on LinkedIn, send me a message, and I'll happily forward that video on to you so you can hear it in her own words. It's only about 10 minutes long. But her point was a very simple one, and I can resonate with this as a client of an accounting firm. So if you turn around to me and you say, "Dan, we've got this available, it's there if you want it," I'll go, "Thanks, that sounds great." Is anything going to happen? No. If you turn around to me and say, "Dan, this is how we want you to do this is why it's important, and this is what it's going to look like," then that tends to get action. That tends to happen. It's leading the charge with clients. And those of you who it resonated with, where you're using cloud services, portals, apps, software, payment systems, whatever it may be that's elsewhere in this arena today, one of the difficult challenges is actually getting people like me to do stuff. And so how you present it to us in the first instance really matters. And you have that permission. You can lead the charge with me. You can tell me what to do. I want you to do that. Jennifer's phrase was, our clients, they outsource that expertise to us. They've made that decision to say they want us to tell them what to do, how best to do it, because they trust our advice on that. And I feel the same. So if you can tell me what to do and how you want me to do it, it's going to happen. And if you can bring those other sorts of programs together into your own app, you can now use a notification that says, "Dan, go and have a look at this." And you can influence that behavior much more easily than just leaving things up to the client's own volition. And like anything in life, if it's done with enthusiasm, that enthusiasm is contagious. So if you can sit down in front of me and say, "This is how we want you to do it, this is why it's important," and you believe that, I'm going to believe it as well, and it's going to get my reaction, get my action on these things much more successfully. The human touch, this is Jennifer's quote, is really important. Any excuse to reach out and do something new, so that's what we did, and they really liked it. Many of them were like, "Well, I can scan receipts, track my mileage." I can't say it as well as Jennifer does, but oh my goodness, this is fabulous. If you can use that human relationship and use the technology as an enabler in there, then that's working to your advantage. There's no silver bullet. Don't expect technology to do everything for you. Don't expect to buy something and leave it on the shelf and expect it to change your life. But neither do you want to just discount stuff. It's about making those decisions that are right for your firm. So thank you very much for this morning. Really happy to share some other thoughts, or if you've got questions or any disagreements. I'm as equally fond of disagreements as I am, because it causes some good conversation. But really happy to talk that through. Otherwise, thank you very much. It's been great to speak. If you wanted to find out more about how we help solve some of those things and what other firms are doing, the guys next door will happily walk you through that on the tellies and show you some of that stuff. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks.